Hi guys, today's going to be a bit of an angry rant. Bondware and the marketing manager Michelle Ward have put out a press release, and it's really pissed me off, to be honest. If you don't like bad language, you better leave now. Uh, in my review of Poser 12, I criticised the implementation of Python 3. Python is the scripting language which underpins Poser. Uh, to be honest, I've never been happy the fact that Poser has depended on third-party scripting in order to work. It used Flash for the content library, and then when Flash was retired, the content library on earlier versions ceased to work, and it also used Python for scripting of many of its utilities. And what happened was with Poser 12, Bondware upgraded from Python 2 to Python 3, and in so doing they basically emasculated the program. Many of the previous scripts, third-party scripts, stopped working, but worse still, many of the integrated scripts also stopped working. Many vital scripts, such as scripts that added tattoos and dirt and dust and blood to your figures, even simple scripts for adding textures. Some people chose scripts to add textures rather than simply using the material room, and I complained really strongly about that. It was one of my strongest complaints in my review of Poser 12, and it was never addressed by Bondware. In fact, Michelle Willard or the people over there have never acknowledged that review at all, although a member of the support staff did, which was nice. But I did get an email from Ken1171, who is a vendor on Renderosity, and to be honest, in his response, he made a moderately reasonable argument for the transition to Python 3, and at the time I kind of thought to myself, that's a really bitter pill, but okay. But now Michelle and the PR team over at Bondware have released this press release, and I'm absolutely fuming. There's a saying which you probably heard, which goes, "Don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining," and that's exactly what this press release is. It's done in the form of a vendor study, but in actual fact, what it is a whitewashing of the fact that they emasculated Poser 12. So it basically goes over some of the reasons for Python 3. Let me first start by talking about what Ken1171 Design said to me in private messages about why Python 3 was implemented. Basically, Python 2 was long overdue for end of life, so Bondware implemented Python 3 so that it would continue to be using the most contemporary version of Python. Now, you could argue that was a reasonable justification if it were not for the fact that there was no reason for them to go to Python 3. It wasn't as if everything it wasn't like Flash. When Flash went end of life, everything that depended on Flash stopped working. When Shockwave went end of life, every website that used Shockwave format stopped working. But with Python, when the people who that make Python moved to Python 3, it wasn't as if all the scripts for Poser 11 stopped working. The implementation of Python didn't refer to a third-party website to work. People wrote scripts in Python 2. Poser recognized scripts in Python 2. The scripts worked fine. Okay, but what he was saying is well, the program's end of life. People need to move on. And at the time, it seemed reasonable. But now, having read what he's written, it just comes across as self-serving bullshit. He's one of the people who is involved intimately with Bondware in pushing the new agenda for Python 3, so that we swallow this bitter pill. And in this so-called press release that's been put out by Bondware and Michelle Willard, I'll read you a bit here. It says, one of the previous limitations in Poser, I'll go along with it. One of the previous limitations in Poser was an inability to protect Python scriptwriters from online piracy. Okay, fair enough. That's one of the reasons why it was no longer viable to make scripts for Poser. In any market, if vendors cannot make a profit, they simply have to move on. That's what we see happening right now. But now, Poser 12 has new improvements to how Python scripts are both protected from piracy and how they are installed into the software. Right, this whole bit here is bullshit, okay? The reason why it was no longer viable to make scripts for Poser is because the Poser market was dying because it was neglected by Smith Micro. The last version of Poser was 5 or 7 years ago. It virtually got no advertising, no working on. The program was a decade behind comparable things in the market, and DAS 3D are giving away their program for free. The scripts for DAS 3D are just as piratable, but they are still written in their dozens. It's not that piratable scripts are not viable, it's that the Poser market is not viable, and Smith and Bondware definitely knows that, because they have seen their sales of Poser figures decrease. They've worked really, really hard to try and buoy up the Poser market with their La Femme and L'Homme figures, but the fact is that they're competing with a market that gives the bedrock software away for free. So basically the market is moving away from script writers, and let's be honest, the market for scripts was always a tiny subset of the total market for Poser. So anyway, Ken goes on to say, these improvements were accomplished by adding automated installation support. Okay, very nice. Now Python scripts will appear in the scripts menu after installation. Very nice. The installation of Poser software is nice. Although many people like the flexibility of installing stuff where they want. Anyway, not to worry. The improvements also give Python developers the ability to verify that a Poser user has purchased the product before the executing app, as well as includes limits to the number of times the script has been downloaded and installed per purchase. Okay, I don't really understand this limits to the number of times the script has been downloaded and purchased. If I've purchased a program, I expect to be able to download it 1,000 times if I need to. If I keep changing machines, or I install on different machines for when I'm at work and at home, and new laptops and new desktops, I should never hit against a hard wall here. Okay, but let's ignore that and just recognise, okay, prevention for piracy is a good thing. Okay, as a content creator myself, I am only too willing to see anything that stops the software for Poser being pirated as a good thing, provided it doesn't come at the expense of all of the users, and that's what this has happened. I consider this to be the equivalent of taking the engine out of a car so that thieves can't take it away, so that they can't steal it. So what you've got now is a program that's been emasculated so that they can sell you more cars, but nobody can drive the bloody things. Okay, so let's continue on down to here. So there's a load of guff there, which just artist overview stuff, if you like, and then it comes down here to justify to go back and justify this decision to go from Python 2 to Python 3, which is the most consequential crippling of any piece of software I've ever seen, to be honest. So he says. Michelle Willard is asking this incredibly self-serving question: how do the changes in Poser 12 that protect Python scripts help creators like you? And Ken responds, That's a good question. There were many who came before me in this field, and we have to learn from their experience. How come we used to have so many Python developers in the poser market and now they're all gone? What happened? Well, the market moved, for God's sakes. Don't be an idiot. It's incredibly self-serving. You must think that we're morons, Ken. He says, based on feedback from veterans like Phil C, what happened was passed. That's bullshit. Phil Cook is a nice guy, but his products were dodgy. They didn't work properly. They were hard to use. And Phil Cook said to me once, I've lost over $1 million to piracy because people stole all my scripts. And this is like the games companies who say they lost $1 billion, trillion, gazillion dollars to game piracy because all the games that are pirated that we would have sold. And it's nonsense. The music industry has proven that. They've done study after study. A pirated piece of software is not a piece of software that would have been bought. Okay, so yes, there's a definite case that some of the software that was pirated would definitely have been bought. So there's Phil Cook and Ken are both right that they have lost some money to piracy, but to suggest that in Phil's case that he lost $1 million to piracy is absolute bullshit. You know, it's a complete manipulation. Apart from anything else, he doesn't know how many copies of his software were pirated. He doesn't know how many were downloaded from download sites. He's just completely making stuff up. Okay, so to suggest he has any idea how many copies were pirated is a lie in the first place. But it's based on an illusion. But anyway, he goes on and says he claimed one would buy the script and then others would download it from pirates. Yeah, that's potentially true. But again, given the fact that scripts are generally bought by the more savvy part of the market, they only take a very, very tiny subset of the poser market. Most poser users are buying figures and sets. They're not buying scripts, okay? And as somebody who bought one of Phil's scripts and found that it was virtually unusable, even with technical support, the reason that I didn't buy from Phil C again is because his stuff wasn't well written. So, you know, he's a lovely guy, don't get me wrong, I've got no problem with the person, but if you buy something from somebody and then it doesn't do what it says on the packet, or it's so hard to use that you basically need to become an expert in your own right to use it, then that is why people don't go back, you know. He says video games keep being played by piracy, yes, but it survives because it's a huge industry out there. No, again, what I said, you know, that not every pirated game is a game that would have been sold. But okay, let's just give him the fact that a lot of the games that have been pirated would have been bought. He says, conversely, the poser market is small in comparison, so the effects of piracy are much more severe here, especially when Python scripts niche is even smaller within the poser market as a whole. So he acknowledges that the Python scripts market is a very tiny subset of an already shrinking market, the poser market, which is being eroded by DAS. And as I said, the problem here is not that the Python scripts niche is so small. The problem is that the poser market has been lost to a more aggressive DAS studio, who have basically handled their marketing better at every single stage and had the sense to give away poser. Even now, Bondware is charging a professional price for poser, albeit a low professional price. So Bondware has bought poser with the desire to upsell to their shop, but they're still demanding that people buy the program. And to be honest, the broken state poser was in, they ought to be paying me to use it. I've had the program now for 4 or 5 months. They've released maybe half a dozen patches, and it's still absolutely terminally broken in some areas, particularly the lighting. So for them to be charging for that program, you know, there's a case for me to go to them and demand my money back. But because the rendering is so fast, I tolerate all of the other crap. But the fact that I now have to use Poser 11, which since they took over, it all links into them, just to get basic features such as Python 2 support and by extension Skydome and other things like that, and Easy Skin, is an absolute disgrace. You know, that it is conceivable that if Bondware had wanted to, that they could have built in backward compatibility for Python 2. They could have left that there and then implemented Python 3 for new people, and then just said that new scripts that you want to have security on need to be Python 3 compliant. But they didn't. They basically threw all of the customers under the bus. You know, they're trying to build off a market of legacy customers. They're not developing a new market here. They're hoping that all of us people who've been around for years are going to upgrade to the program, which is the most likely base of people to buy, and then they're hoping to build a new market off some kind of buzz from us. But what they've done is they've thrown us under the bus. All of that legacy software that we've had, which is now hampered many, you know, the more I use Poser 12, the more I realise how much I lost. I just can't believe how many things don't work anymore in Poser 12, not to mention the fact that they have actually written the program badly anyway. Anyway, to continue, he says, this is where Renderosity came up with the idea of protecting Python scripts if they were purchased from their store. It's a clear attempt to make this section of the market viable again and attract Poser devs to explore this market. Again, let me just emphasise, the primary Poser market is the content market, not the Python script market. The Python script, I bet, is not even a fraction of a 1%. Is not even 1% of the market. So to sell this as if it's done to help the whole market is just complete bullshit. I'm sorry, Ken. I don't know why you allowed yourself to be manipulated into doing this piece of PR guff. Anyway, he says, this is where I came in. My Lockmaster script for Poser 12 was the very first to implement this protection, and I've worked closely with Renderosity to test and resolve any issues that pop up in the way. In the way. There were some bumps in the beginning, but now things have finally started to fall into place. It is not the script protection that is new in Poser 12. It is not just the script protection that is new in Poser 12. Renderosity has also completely redesigned the way Python scripts are packaged into zip files, making it much easier for customers to have them installed compared to how it was in the past. It was so easy for people to install scripts incorrectly before, but now the entire process has been simplified so that all of those Python script installation issues will become a thing of the past. Okay, that's definitely a good thing, but one thing that really annoyed me when I installed LockScript, which incidentally is a fantastic script, Lockmaster, you know, I really love the script. Ken, great job. You know, I recommend it to anybody who's listening to me here. But one of the things that really annoys me is that it now inscrutably installs the scripts in a totally different folder on your boot drive. Now, personally, I install Poser on a second drive and install the content somewhere else still. The reason being that I want to protect myself so that if the boot drive goes down, I don't lose all of my installed stuff. But now with this, the scripts get installed on your boot drive, your content gets installed wherever you choose to install that, and Poser is it's simplified it, but it's also made it less intuitive, especially for people who used to understand the way that Python scripts work. You know, you now need to understand a whole new set of folders. So it's a thing with multiple facets to it. He says, I now have 3 scripts using this new packaging and protection in my store. Let me just carry on. And there are many more to come. I'm spearheading this with Renderosity with hopes to bring Python devs back to Poser. I understand that may not be possible to stop piracy completely, since nobody could ever do that, but we can make it harder. This is a new renaissance for Python in Poser, and I'm hoping for the best. Now, I will say that one of my massive complaints about Poser was the lack of script market. But that was never anything to do with the fact that scripts were piratable. It was to do with the fact that the Poser market was not viable for people to write to. You know, if you have a market, I don't know how many Poser users there are compared to Daz Studio, but I would be prepared to guess that it's 2, 3, 4, even 10 to 1 on Daz Studio. And every single one of those Daz purchasers can download pirated scripts, but there's still enough of a script market for the script writers to keep on writing them. But you know, I very much doubt that the Python script market is large enough for pirates to waste their time deconstructing his scripts to take the piracy protection out. But we have sacrificed a massive amount to enable this feature, and now reading this piece of PR crap from Bondware, it seems clear to me that this was designed to protect their content market at the expense of their users. You know, it really is quite shocking that they have sacrificed us all in order to do this. And it seems perhaps a bit silly to advertise Ken's work here, but I will just say that two of the three scripts that he's working on are things that I mentioned in my poser review. I'll just have a look here. The scatter tool I didn't mention looks like a fantastic script. I'll definitely be looking at that. Light dots. You can basically add custom descriptions to your memory dots, which is a great idea. You do rollovers here now, and it names them. Again, I think that should have been built into the program. I don't think I should have to pay extra for that, but I suppose if it's valuable enough to you, you pay him for it. And IK Manager, I suggested that the inverse kinematics should have a panel on Poser, and again I mentioned that, and now he's done a kind of a version of it, which has a panel that comes up, and again that was something I asked for. So basically monetizing the features that I felt that Bondware should have included in the first place. So now the ball is in my court. Do I think those features are valuable enough to pay for? And to be honest, seeing him be a mouthpiece for Bondware, I'm a bit resentful now to give him any more money. Although the message he sent me, I had considered making a video on in support of Python 3, but now I see this bullshit, I'm really not inclined to do so. Anyway, excuse the rant, guys. I'll leave it there.